turn your video off. Come on, there we go. Okay, so certainly one of the most influential, some of the most important, most significant novels of the 20th century written. If anybody has any specific things they want to say about it before we get started, what am I looking for? Just jump right in. I keep trying to share, but oh. Oh, okay. I can't seem to share my. Stephen, can you share your copy? Because it's not working for me.
Are we discussing the movie or the comic book or I'm sorry, the
Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, I think I got it now. All right. This is George Orwell's 1984, the graphic novel, adapted and illustrated by Fido Nesti, 1984. That's what we're discussing. Well, I guess only like 3 people here have actually read the comic book version, but I thought it was a very well done adaptation, very, very nicely done, very responsibly done. I thought it was very, very well done, actually. The artwork, not the most flashy, but got the job done. Doesn't have to be. This isn't the type of a story where you need flashy artwork. But really well done. I don't know who this guy is, Fido Nesti. He's from Sao Paulo. I never heard of him before, but I think he did a good job adapting it. Very nicely done. So he does play around a little bit with. He gets playful at certain points with, techniques and tricks here and there. But for the most part, it's a fairly straightforward adaptation. He keeps it on the down low. He doesn't get too flashy. You don't need to at this point. But a nice use of the 3x3 grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the pages on a 3x3 grid, a 9-panel page.
Nice I like the soldiers there. Can we go back to the soldiers?
This one, yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful, aren't they? Stone-faced statues. They've been hit by who was it? The White Witch in Narnia turned people into statues. They've been hit.
Well,
very effective. I thought very effective.
But isn't the irony here is that the book is so beautifully written and so lush with language and humanism that to have a comic book version of it is actually more befitting of the world in 1984 than the novel itself, because the novel is really very romantic and lush and beautifully written, humanistic point of view. By reducing it to a comic book outline, it seems to contradict the spirit of the book.
Well, perhaps.
That's interesting. Yeah, essentially that's what I noticed as well. It's romantic literature. Its central theme is a romance.
Yeah, and it's beautifully written. It still believes in the value of language and still believes in the value of humanism. And to sort of reduce it to a comic book seems to almost be reality.
Would you make that same criticism for a movie?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends on the movie, but the movie can be brilliantly done depending on the director and how he wants to humanize the environment. But the main thesis of 1984 is the death of humanism, and yet it's told in a very humanistic language. It's one of the most beautifully written novels. It believes in humanity. The language itself suggests that there's a belief in humanity.
Well, I would say Nesty certainly was very respectful to Orwell's original prose. I think he's very gives it its due. Certainly,
It's very
I
reductive,
felt.
sort of like it's exactly what would happen to novels in 1984.
Mhm.
They would be reduced to comic strips.
Yeah, it does kind of touch on the whole idea of a reduction of language.
Exactly. And the shades of psychological and emotional tones is sort of like annihilated through this
Right.
very simple verbosity, simple language.
Yeah, well, it's truncated. It's the I think it's the actual. It's all from the book, isn't it? Mostly, it's just truncated. It's just grabbed what will fit from the book to produce a comic.
Yeah. It strikes me as being very ironic.
Yeah, well, I would say a movie version would be even more so. And there have been many movie versions, a number, and television adaptations, certainly.
And they've not been good.
Okay.
Oh, I thought I quite enjoyed the one with John Hurt. I thought it was quite a nice movie.
Well, the thing about movies is they don't need language. And the whole thing about 1984, it's about the vitiation and reduction of language. And the book itself is lush with language. So it's sort of the spirit of the book contradicts the actual world in which it portrays.
Yeah, it might come down to kind of like what Marshall McLuhan, I think, he said the medium is the message. So it really comes down to what does the medium allow for and what does it not allow for.
It's like taking Hamlet and putting it into a comic book. How would you do that?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. By all means. Is that
You do?
the original version from the Middle Ages or Shakespeare's?
You do it the same way you do it for a movie or a television adaptation.
Well, Hamlet would be a play. It's a play. So as a movie, it could work because the language is still the same.
No, hang on. I said, are you talking about Shakespeare's version or the original?
Well, Shakespeare, of course.
Well, okay, Shakespeare copied Hamlet. He didn't come up with the idea. It comes from a medieval work, which predated Shakespeare by about 400 years. Comes from Saxo's History of the Danes. And if you like Hamlet, read the original. It's actually better.
Oh, come on, please. You got to be kidding me.
You mean Bill Shakespeare copied a work
He didn't
and
copy
is
the language.
necessarily superior to the original story?
He didn't copy the language. He didn't copy the psychology behind it.
Hang on. The psychology was in the original story.
Yeah, but you can't compare.
Bill was a plagiarist. I'm sorry. Bill is not who you think he was. He had a certain genius, but he was a plagiarist.
Are you saying that the play that he copied from was exactly the Hamlet that we have now? That he copied the to be or not to be speech and all those speeches that are in Hamlet were copied?
No, not everything, but the psychology was there in the original story.
It's hard to argue at this point. I don't see the point.
Okay. So I thought this was a good read, a worthy read. I really enjoyed it. I recommend it. You know what? Oh, I should have said at the beginning, this just 7 days ago, just won Best Graphic Novel Adaptation at the Eisners last week, last Friday night. Won Best graphic novel adaptation, and a worthy winner. Actually, I haven't read the other nominees, but I'm going to say this is a worthy winner anyway. I recommend to anybody who hasn't read the novel, I would say, yeah, this is worth checking out. If you're not familiar with it, certainly is an important novel, important story.
Sorry, what won the Eisner Awards?
1984.
This one?
This one, the one Best Graphic Novel Adaptation work. Yeah, last week. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. And I think it's really, really well done. I liked it. And for the rest of you who have not checked it out, I urge you to check it out. It's a really well done adaptation, as good as you can do an adaptation of a novel. I think he was very respectful, very. It's very striking. Certainly, it's a very powerful story. It's a very powerful novel, and I thought Nesty did a good job with this, I will say. So some of you did read it. Well, what did you? Those of you who read it, any comments?
Well, I like, and I haven't seen it in the graphic novel as you're going through. Maybe you're getting there right now. I thought I was very struck. This was my second or third read. I did not read the graphic novel, but this time when I read it, I was really struck by the actual love story, because there were two people who knew what could happen, and yet they were willing to take that chance anyway, and have this affair. And that was a real compelling argument to me for maybe all the humanity wasn't actually gone. They hadn't, Ingsoc and the powers that be hadn't actually managed to quash all of humanity yet, because these two people at least were willing to take that risk, at the risk of losing their lives. They knew what would happen, and that was really striking to me.
But at the ending, he's broken. He breaks up and he turns her in.
He does, and she turns him in.
Yeah, so that's the end of
Yeah.
that.
Well, it is, but I mean, we're so steeped in fairy tales, like, that they meet, they fall in love, they live happily ever after. Well, maybe ever after is only while it lasts. And for however long the love story lasts, that's there forever. Like we hear, and they lived happily ever after, but we don't know whether that was 20 years, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. We don't know. Here, it was whatever length of time that they had their affair, and they turned each other in at the end, but they had those moments together.
Well, they betrayed each other.
They did.
But they didn't turn each other in. They were already
that's true.
in.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they betrayed each other in the end, but they still had the moments that they had together.
Well, a phenomenon in history, in advertising, I remember them saying how advertising switched during the 1980s. And in the older days, romance or sex was the most powerful draw card. There was no greater ideal for a lot of people other than a romantic interlude on a tropical island or something like that was the common fantasy. But in the 80s, things changed. Advertising realised that now, rather, more often, people were interested in status and power. So it's working. We've improved the human species. They're rising above sex and loving status and power. The party. Well, you might as well go on, Nathaniel.
Hello. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we were discussing the book, so I didn't read the graphic novel. But I was going to say, I actually think in America we're kind of more Brave New World-ish than 1984. It's not that people can't know information. It's more like people are asleep, so they just don't watch. They don't really dig into the news or really try to study any philosophy or anything like that. And so, I guess I think we do have 1984 aspects to our society, like you can't, I don't know, like just as an example, like cancel culture, like if you think a certain thought, you'll get in trouble kind of with people, but I still think we're more like asleep, I guess, but anyways, that's it, thanks.
Well, I think 1984 is about the power of ideology over personal life, over the personal life. Ideology sort of dictates how you live and how you think.
If you read the Goldstein's analysis, he says that a world of plenty cannot last. And that's his whole point, that 1984 was a world that went from a world of plenty to something that was impoverished. And that was ideal for the nature of the dictatorship. And that's where we are now. We had a West that was rich, which is now being impoverished as we fight the eternal war with the eternal enemies. We are being reset.
Right.
You'll have nothing and love it.
Well, what 1984 didn't take into account is the world of computers that sort of dominate our world.
Or the machinery. One of the machines was the television that had arisen in George Orwell's time, and he saw the potential.
Yeah, I mean, technology was brought up in '84. Essentially, I think the idea was to kind of create a status quo where there wasn't any more technological advancement in order to make as a way of keeping the population under control, because more technological advancement would mean more education. More educated populace would mean addressing inequality. And I think Stephen, you mentioned land of plenty and that it can't last. I think we kind of touched on that as well, the idea of the principle of inequality that seems to be a natural principle. How do you combat that? So this is, I guess, their approach to dealing that, not having an individual or a segment or a group of people, but a party that is ever changing. It's not like, wealth being passed from one generation to the next. They seem to be randomly chosen between the inner party and the outer party. And Ron, I would agree with you that ideology does play a huge part in this book as well. And then also, Nathaniel, I would agree as well that our society today is more Brave New World than 1984. However, there are aspects of 1984 certainly mixed in. It's not either or. It's really a mixture of the two.
Well, that was a big argument between Huxley. Well, not the other guy was dead at the time. Huxley was saying his vision was going to be the one, and that Orwell was wrong. But I'm willing to give Orwell the points. I think that the Brave New World is a temporary phase, and it will become Orwellian. This was the point, that this was a class-structured society, and the point being made that a society which is built on equality will be unstable.
it's also a society dependent on reduction of language to a few. Instead of having 500 synonyms for a word, you get rid of all the synonyms and there's just one. Language is sort of reduced. And if you reduce language, you reduce consciousness. If you reduce consciousness, you reduce humanity.